I feel like there was a certain point where I was doing things that were like dated feeling and I didn't realize it. And I feel like you could be like, well, here's all the things that makes this song cool and do a song like that and it doesn't resonate. So I wasn't really being that authentic. But I also feel like I didn't know how to be authentic because I didn't feel like I had anything that interesting to say emotionally. And now I'm like such a therapy rat that they're always
preach.
Yeah,
I'm here for it.
There is always something relevant for everyone to say. I think it's just kind of hard. It's kind of embarrassing to like put it into lyrics. Kind of.
That's the beauty of metaphor.
I agree, but like our last album. The singer of one of my favorite bands, OBGMs, his name's Denzel, he sent me a text where he's like, I'd stop listening to your new album because it was making me cry. And that made me feel awkward, but also like, I think that's a good thing. Like that's, you know what I mean? It's like, you almost want to, or at least I do want to feel like kind of embarrassed showing the songs to people because it's so vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know?
Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sarah Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up-and-coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I am very happy to welcome Kevvy here with me today. Kevvy is a force on the music and comedy scene, who has established himself as a multi-hyphenate talent. As a frontman and multi-instrumentalist for the indie pop band Fake Shark. Try saying that 10 times fast.
Indie bop pops.
That's the one. Who has earned a top 10 radio hit and performed around the world. He showcases an immediate knack for pop-friendly songwriting, ingratiating hooks, and youthful dynamic exuberance. Kevvy's list of collaborators, ranging from the Foo Fighters' Dave Grohl and Carly Rae Jepsen to the proggy pop swirl of Hannah Georgas and the glam tattooista of Kat Von D, adequately illustrate his genre-defying range. In addition to his performance work, he's produced 4 Juno Award-winning comedy albums and specials, not to mention the recent Juno-winning scores he did for 2 Canadian albums, I Wish I Was a Dinosaur by Ivan Decker, and A Little Bit of Buttle by 2019 emerging comedian nominee Sophie Buttle. Am I saying that properly?
You are.
I am. Okay. Talents, charm, and likability are undoubtedly at play, but so too is a mutable aesthetic presence that moves easily from music to comedy and back again. His scoring and producing for film and television, contributions to the award-winning American Mary, and songs from Carly's Juno Album of the Year nominee Kiss further illustrates his diverse range.
That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me. Bye, everyone. That's all I need. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll send you your bio after.
Send it right to my mom and the rest of my family.
Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us your story briefly for those who perhaps are just meeting you for the first time today?
Sure. I wanted to start playing music as a teenager. I went to an art high school and I majored at it in visual art. So like drawing and painting. So that was kind of like my first art form.
Were you at the Fine Arts School in Langley?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got accepted there in 8th grade but it goes grade 1 to 12. And I got accepted there for drawing and painting, which was kind of like what I thought I was going to do when I was a little kid. And then my friends, I got really into like metal music and stuff, and all my friends started like a straight edge punk rock band, a hardcore band, and they needed a bass player. And so that was my first instrument. And that's when I was 15, I think. And then I just completely switched I'm so like all or nothing with everything that I do that it's like, I just completely abandoned drawing and painting at that point. Still had to do it because I still went to the high school, but I was just obsessed with playing music and like, it's funny, like month 2 of playing bass, I was like trying to like learn Primus songs, which are like the most like, you know what I mean? It's like, I didn't start with anything easy. And I even went to a guitar teacher because there's like no bass teachers. and he just gave me Californication by Red Hot Chili Peppers. Like, just learn this, learn how to play the whole thing. And so every week I come in and we do scales, and he'd just make me play one of the songs that I learned. And I mean, there's pretty, like, I got pretty okay, like, right away from doing that, because he was just so strict on me. And like, that's a good entry point to learn to like play from ear. And then I decided I wanted to be a vocalist, but and it's funny, like, even you asking me here, like, thank you for having me. I still don't really think of myself as a singer. I think it's like fairly common. Like my vocal teacher CQ said that too. Like, everyone says that. But I went to audio school at it was called Art Institute at the time, for audio engineering and producing music, and I really just wanted to make my own album. And then I got it. Once I finished there, I was working in a record store, and a friend of mine from a guy I knew in high school, we weren't friends because I was like a year older than him. His name's Lewis. He kept coming into the record store, and we kept talking about bands, and then we decided to form a band, which was Fake Shark Real Zombie, which was like a heavy band. And right out of the gate, we toured the UK, like within like a few months of being a band, with this band called Test Icicles. And the singer Dev Hines went on to form Blood Orange, which is like a very sort of well-respected R&B project now. And then oddly enough, he was like playing live with Carly for a while. Like, so weird. The weird sort of like, it's a small world thing. Yeah. So we toured the UK 3 times right away, and Japan once, and got signed there. And that was like the first like year and a half of being in a band. And like, it's so funny. Like, I actually talked to your brother about these tours, because like after the first tour of the UK, we just self-booked a tour, and we were sleeping in squats and sketchy floors, and so scary. And I got pneumonia on a tour, and we were gone for a month, and there was no smoking ban in England at the time. So during our shows, everyone would be smoking. And I hate cigarette smoke. It's like I'm curious how you feel about that kind of thing, because it just cooks my throat like almost instantly. Most things do, which is frustrating. Like, I love air conditioning. I love
it's hell on your voice, though.
It destroys my voice. It's dries it right out. It like almost, like I said, like almost like instantly, like being on a plane and then singing right after sucks.
Okay, well, I have a tip for you, though.
Oh, I would love it. Yeah, I would love it. I got like this like misting.
Okay, that's what I was going to talk to you about. So I'm glad that you have it.
Yeah, but I feel like there's got to be better ones than, like, it's like an Epsom salts thing that it's just this mist into this mask. Anyway,
okay, so I don't know which one you have specifically, and but if you're using the one that's like a mask, that one okay, you need the one that is going to be isotonic saline solution is what you have to, I can't find the word that is the nebulize. That's what we're looking for.
Got you.
So you have to nebulize that. Nebulizing breaks down the particles small enough that they will actually reach your vocal folds.
Got you.
Like if you just steam, it won't make it to your vocal folds.
Got you.
Nebulizing will. But like the one that I have is from a company called Vocal Mist, but there's different companies that make them.
That's the one CQ suggested. I didn't get that one.
So that one, it comes with a mask, like sounds like what you have, that kind of looks like an airplane oxygen mask.
Yeah, that's right.
But that one, the solution is going to hydrate your nasal passages and your mouth, but it's probably not going to get as far down as your vocal folds.
Got you.
It comes with 2 mouthpieces, that specific one, and it comes with an actual mouthpiece that kind of looks like you're vaping at that point. Sick. Except that it's nebulizing. Right. But that one, you're not losing half of it up your nose. It is literally only going in your mouth, and way more of it is going to reach your vocal folds at that point. So it's worth investing in something that has that kind of mouthpiece.
I should get a new one, because I brought that one on the tour I just did, which is like a 5-week tour.
Yeah.
And I do warm-ups as soon as I wake up, like this one, and then one right before sound check, and I still felt like my voice was feeling like pretty damaged by the end of it. And then I was home for 2 weeks, and then we played a show, and my voice was like back and felt great. It's like the first time it felt great since the beginning of that tour. So
yeah, dry environments are really hard.
Yeah, well, yeah, like going across Canada in that dry winter we just had. Whoo,
yeah,
destroyed my voice. Like it was bad.
Yeah,
you know, and I can't shut up. So chatty, Kevvy is the van.
And Kevvy talks about himself in third person.
He's the worst at Kevvy. I hear that's bad for your voice too.
But only when it's in third person.
I'm like obsessed with learning about narcissists right now, and that is absolutely an overt narcissist move to talk about yourself in the third person, and that is something like so many athletes do. Like when they're being interviewed, they'll talk about themselves in the third person.
Well, I hope that you stick to it for the rest of this interview now.
Kevvy will do whatever it is that Kevvy needs to do to get an interview for Sarah.
All right. Well, here on the Vocal Lab, Sarah would like to shine.
I like where we're going with this.
We are aiming to shine a light into the music industry through the lens of what I know now that I wish I'd known then. So with that in mind, if you were starting your career all over again,
yes,
is there anything that you would do differently?
Well, I feel like it took me writing thousands of songs to get any good at songwriting. I feel like I was trying to copy my influences a lot, and the music industry is like such a fast moving thing that if your music's sounding like it's 5 years old, that's significantly worse than sounding like 20 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like there was a certain point where I was doing things that were like dated feeling and I didn't realize it. And I feel like you could be like, well, here's all the things that makes this song cool, and do a song like that, and it doesn't resonate. So I wasn't really being that authentic. But I also feel like I didn't know how to be authentic because I didn't feel like I had anything that interesting to say emotionally. And now I'm like such a therapy rat that there always
preach.
Yeah,
I'm here for it.
There is always something relevant for everyone to say. I think it's just kind of hard. It's kind of embarrassing to like put it into lyrics. Kind of.
That's the beauty of metaphor.
I agree, but like it's interesting. Like our last album, the singer of one of my favorite bands, OBGMs, his name's Denzel. He sent me a text where he's like, "I'd stop listening to your new album because it was making me cry," and that made me feel awkward. But also, like, I think that's a good thing. Like, that's, you know what I mean? It's like you almost want to, or at least I do, want to feel like kind of embarrassed showing the songs to people because it's so vulnerable.
Yeah,
you know. And I actually think your bro is like amazing at that.
Well, and he's referred to it as like you are basically opening your diary to people.
Yeah.
And that's where cloaking it in metaphor can be the protection mechanism so that you're not just giving away everything.
Totally.
But that ostensibly as a songwriter, that's exactly what you're doing, is you're opening up your diary to the world.
Totally. I think though too, like, I grew up like such a fan of Nirvana, and like I would just sort of like, my favorite of their albums was probably the least sort of personal in some ways. Like their album In Utero, like lyrically, it's like a lot of like sort of imagery that isn't that personal, and so early on, that's kind of what I would do. Yeah, you know what I mean. And like the very first album that I wrote with a band, like my band, my goal was not to say me or you at all in the lyrics of the whole album. So that was, you know what I mean? Like it couldn't be more different than how I do it now. It's like super personal. Like, you know, it's like something happened on last Thursday and I already have a song about it now. You know what I mean? It's like much easier to like sort of like focus in now, but I think it takes practice. Like one of my favorite comedians, this guy Anthony Jeselnik, he said he starts every day by reading a couple chapters in his book, any book, keeps the paint wet. Then he'll write try and write 5 jokes a day, and then he'll start his day.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I do feel like it is a muscle that needs to be like exercised.
Yeah.
And I really notice it atrophy if I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, hugely.
Yeah.
And I think that like the concept you're talking about of moving from keeping it impersonal to personalizing it,
Mm-hmm.
I think it can really become a tool for, it's like our vulnerability ends up in the art.
Yeah.
But the art becomes a tool for processing our shit.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, what's interesting too is like on the tour we just did, there were like, before it even started, I knew a lot of the shows were sold out and we were playing these amazing venues. And in the past, I've noticed about myself that I'll go on stage and it's like over before I even noticed it. Like I'm just so focused on giving the audience a good show, and I don't really take a second for myself. I made a conscious effort every night to be like, this is really cool. Like we played the Commodore, us and our friends, Hotel Mira, like we sold it out together. Like a group of friends took over to me the coolest venue in the world.
Yeah.
What an amazing special thing. So I took time a couple times to just be like, this is crazy. Like, but that it started leading me to thinking about the lyrics that I'm singing on stage. It doesn't always, I'm not always feeling the emotions I was feeling when I wrote those words.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It's like a new life for the songs. It's like, what got you to write the song is maybe different than how you perform it.
So in that transition, how do you stay connected to the storytelling when that connection has changed?
Well, I guess I feel like it's interesting. Like there's certain songs of ours that I know resonate in a relatable way with audiences if they hear the words. And I don't mean that to sound arrogant. It's just I feel like it's really relatable. Like we have a song called Loser, and it's like the verses are, just about, maybe I am this way. Maybe, maybe I feel that way. Maybe I do enjoy being sad sometimes. And maybe you know what I mean? It's like, I can see if it's new people in the audience that maybe don't know us, I can see them hearing the lyrics and being like, I feel like I get this. And so my way of the storytelling, of delivering it is a lot of eye contact with individual people. And I really like that about performing now. That isn't something I used to do. And now I really like getting like a temporary connection with people while I'm on stage and they're in the crowd. It's like amazing. Like I'm so lucky I get to do it, Yeah.
That's really interesting because I think like my experience performing has always been, well, it's not that I dislike the eye contact, but it's that sense of like performing to a small intimate crowd where you can see all the people is way more fucking nerve-wracking
totally
than performing to thousands of people where you can see nobody.
Yeah, totally.
And it's that intimacy of the, like, I can see people and I can see on their face what they think of what I'm doing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. Like I have this like recollection of my mom being in the crowd like so long ago and her looking like concerned for me. It's like, oh, this is not going well. Like she's feeling bad for me right now. This sucks. But it's interesting. Like once again, they're going back into the comedy world. There's certain comedians, and that's their whole thing is like crowd interaction, and that's their career. And then there's this comedian named Nikki Glazer that we had on our podcast, and she was like, "Oh, I make it look like I'm looking at the crowd, but I'm actually just looking at the lights. I don't want to see what I don't want to see what they're doing or how they're reacting to it because it will be so devastating and distracting if they're not loving it." I could get that too. Sometimes though, I do like the challenge of we come out for our first song and it's like, and then I'm like, I'm gonna get in there.
Yeah,
I want to get in there. Let Kevvy in. See, I did it again. I did it in.
Let Kevvy change your mind.
Let him in there. Yeah.
All right. So if you were starting at the beginning all over again, is there anything that you absolutely would do the same all over again in your career?
Yeah, I think there were some songs that my first band made that were really, really cool, and I'm proud of them. It is one of those things where it's like, it's like, oh, that song came together in like 10 minutes. Why can't they all be like that? And those like oftentimes are like your best songs. So I'm glad I wrote those with my band. And it was cool sort of not knowing how the touring world worked or the music industry, and just like going on tour in England as my first ever tour. Like, it's pretty cool. And then Japan right after that. So yeah, I don't regret any of those things. I think it's amazing and lucky. I remember a friend of mine who was in a band around that time was like, man, whatever, like, let's say you stop doing music tomorrow, pretty cool you toured Japan.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty amazing. Like, and I agree with that. Like that, but once again, it's one of those things where it's like, I think like a goal should be to be like mindful of when cool things do happen.
Yeah.
Because I'm really guilty of not celebrating like anything.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like it's that great, or I feel like it should have happened for me like way long ago, or whatever that self-destructive thing is,
I think there's a piece to, like, I'm very aware of this in myself, that I always have more goals.
Yeah.
And so when I accomplish this piece of it, I don't stop and celebrate that, because I'm already starting to think about the next thing that I
exactly
have my sights set on to work on.
Yeah.
And I think I think you're absolutely right that can actually be really destructive to not stop and celebrate. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I just accomplished something that's worth celebrating, worth recognizing.
Well, I think that in my own way, maybe it's like I'll feel like it's not worth celebrating because it's not as good as what I've ever seen other people get. Yeah. Which is like a really like sad way to go through life, actually. Like, I'm really bad at celebrating it.
Well, anything. It's really hard because there's always going to be somebody who's done something bigger and better.
Yeah.
But guess what? There's always somebody who's going to be looking at you thinking, what I did isn't as cool as what he did. Right?
Yeah, I guess you're right. That's a good. So basically I should look down on the people more often.
Kevvy looks down on his people.
I think you just got your title for the episode. Yeah.
I didn't know we were actually taping a comedy episode
today.
Focus
on how you're better than people. And don't think about anyone else. Oh man, that's I was in therapy right before this. Let's go back to therapy, I think. I just had a setback.
Excuse me. All right, can we talk for a minute about the relationships in your career?
Sure.
So this is, I'm not specifically asking you to name names, but you can answer it however you want to.
Sure.
What I am asking about is the music business is a business that is very much built on networking and relationships. And so what are the relationships, personal or professional, that you feel have really supported you in your growth or helped you get where you are today?
I mean, honestly, and my greatest ally has been my manager, Jonathan.
Yeah.
He really has been in my corner more than anyone else in this industry, for sure. And he's always been there for advice or just to talk as a friend, honestly, about anything. He's given me the most opportunities. He's had my back when I've needed it. So he would be my number one. Early on, a producer named Dave Ogilvy kind of mentored me and gave me a lot of opportunities to work with him and see how he does things. He's a fantastic mixer. So I learned a lot working with those two. Early on with my 604 Records relationship, I was really close with Carly Rae Jepsen, and I learned a lot about songwriting from her because I think she's a fantastic lyricist that doesn't really overthink an idea before just like, let's try it. So I learned a lot that, because it's funny because like songwriting, especially lyric and vocal writing for me, it was like so tough early on, but I came from a world where you make an instrumental and then you all sit in with it on loop and like try and come up with the vocals. Like vocals are like coming last, and writing with her made me realize that's actually the most important thing and more important than, because chord progressions, most of them have been already done a lot of times. So the way that you can do an interesting, unique spin on it is lyrics and with a melody, you know? So I learned a lot from those three, like early on. You know, just I think it was kind of the first really professional people I'd worked with where they had an impressive resume. And so, yeah, it's interesting too, because like coming into like getting a record deal at 604, like I never even thought about radio play. It wasn't even something that I thought was like relevant. And now it's such a big part of my life. And it's such a, it's interesting. It's just things have changed so much through experiences and like writing with tons of different artists. I'm producing this album by these twins called Fion right now. And I mean, you know, I'll come out of it like they're geniuses. Like I actually think like, how did you just encapsulated all your emotions in lyrics in like 10 minutes in a way that it took me so long to get there, and I still think they're better than me in certain regards of lyric writing, and like it's amazing. Like, and they're both like as musicians, like playing instruments, they're like perfect. It's bizarre. Like, yeah. So I kind of like, honestly, every artist I work with, I kind of walk away looking up to them in some way, in a weird way. You know, it's just like I think it's like a cool like to always sort of be the student, even if you're producing. I
think that's a fantastic perspective to take.
Thanks.
Though, right? I think that this is an industry that lends itself to the possibility, not always played out, but lends itself to the possibility of some unhealthy power dynamics.
100%.
And so approaching it from that perspective, where you're always coming in willing to be the student, even though you're kind of the guy in charge, like that's a really, I would anticipate that would create a really healthy dynamic.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because like I'm the GM of Comedy Here Often, which is the comedy record label that's part of 604 Records. I would hate to feel like everyone thinks that I'm some know-it-all that just tells everyone what to do. I don't know everything. And there's everyone that works at Comedy Here Often knows way more than me at something. You know, my specialty, I think, is like finding talent and then producing the record in a way that it could be successful. But it's still like mostly the comedian being like brilliant, you know? So, but I mean, how frustrating is it when you're working on a team and one of the people there is just saying something so that they can say that they worked on it.
Right.
That's so frustrating, and it's not conducive to the end product being great. So
yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about your songwriting process. Okay. You said you started off coming from a place where it was recording the beds and putting it on loop and then working hard at lyrics.
Yeah.
What does your songwriting process look like now?
You know, I got a really cool piece of advice from Chad Kroger one time. It was like so offhand. I don't even think he meant it as advice. It's just like something he said. Because usually I'm in control room 2 here. That's like a room that Louise Burns and I typically work on stuff out of. Together and independently. And Chad used the room for a few weeks one time. And he... like after he was in there, I think he was writing the last Nickelback record in there. I came in and I can't remember what sparked the conversation, but he basically said like, oh, I don't even bother coming to the studio unless I have a great title for a song. And that informs how the song goes and what it's about and the chord progression. It's like, whoa. So now I'm just always on the lookout for what could be a great title.
Yeah.
And then I kind of let my mind wander on like, what could that be about? You know? And like if an indie rock band put out a song called that, is that cool? And like, what would that be like? And like, you know what I mean? So I think that was accidentally maybe the best songwriting advice I've ever gotten. And then the other thing that I do, like I just look up to so many people that I don't think I'm like an expert at anything. I'm just like such a fan that it's like, I watched this TED Talk with John Mayer and he was saying, actually it wasn't a TED Talk. It was just like he went to a university and talked about songwriting, but he said,
so was that not TED Talk?
I don't think it was. Yeah, it's not TED Talk. No TEDs allowed. Kevvy's on the other hand. Whole audience full. Lucky crowd. He was saying like, John Mayer was saying like, if you are trying to come up with a vocal melody and you're mumbling something, mumble actual words because you'll accidentally, subconsciously probably come up with something cool. Like, instead of mumbling gibberish, mumble words. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. There's this songwriter I'm friends with in LA. Her name's Annie Hardy. Her band, Giant Drag, so good. When she and I were making music, all her lyrics she was coming up with when we were writing were just the most offensive things. And then I was like recording it and I was like, okay. And then she's like, that's not gonna be the end thing. That's just how I do it. And it's like, and then I'll change it later. But like, that's her process. It's like, she's so weird and funny and everybody's thing is different. But I think that's like really good advice to mumble words because you'll probably accidentally come up with something like magical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for any listeners out there who aren't familiar with any kind of songwriting process, that is a thing that often happens is the music will get written and a singer who's writing lyrics will just kind of booba-dooba-doo through their way through coming up with a melody. And that's what you're referring to is doing that, but using words, even if they're in a nonsense order, rather than using like basically scat syllables.
Totally.
Right? Yeah.
And then another great piece of advice I got from like this legend. There's a band called No Effects and the singer, his name's Fat Mike, and he and I were talking about songwriting, and he was talking about how when he starts writing a song, he sings and plays guitar at the same time, and that the vocal that just comes out of him will dictate the chord progression. So it's not like he's writing the chord progression first. He's like doing both at the same time, like right away. And that's wild to me. Like that's such a cool way to do it. And then, his band No Effects are this like skate punk band, but he's like such a Beatles fanatic. And so it ends up being really melodic and great songwriting, but in the fashion of skate punk. Yeah. And then I watched this. I'm such a student of this stuff. I'm obsessed with it. Like Rivers Cuomo from Weezer was talking about how he just constantly thinks, anytime he thinks of lyrics, he puts in an Excel document based on syllables. So like, these are my 5-syllable phrases. These are my 2-syllable phrases. And these are my 5-syllable phrases that start with a consonant. And these are my, And then he comes up with a chord progression that he likes. And then he like Weezerfies it, which is basically to say that he rips off, this is what he said, he like will rip off like a 50s chord progression and then just make it sound like Weezer and then start trying those phrases over it. And then, okay, this would be a good first opening line. Okay, well, the next line should be 3 syllables. So we'll go into my 3-syllable Excel document and then start plunking things in. Well, that's weird. This phrase after this actually takes on a new meaning for this now. So it's funny, in my band, we were like touring and we were listening to him talk about this. It was on this podcast called Song Exploder. And someone in my band was like, that's lame. And I'm like, that's brilliant. I want to try that. That's great. Cause it's like your subconscious writing a song. Yeah. Instead of being like getting all in your head about the meaning. Like you never know what the meaning's going to be. A lot of times not even until the song's done.
And okay, well, first off, this like appeals so much to my data geek. I live my life on spreadsheets. Yeah. And I literally do everything under the sun on spreadsheets. So
Sarah loves a spreadsheet.
Sarah loves a spreadsheet. Sarah thinks spreadsheets are sexy. But also, I just think that the concept, like what you're talking about, that the lyric, you don't necessarily know what the lyric means till it's done.
Yeah.
I think you can take that further, and what the lyric means to the writer is not the same thing that the lyric means to the listener.
Exactly.
And a great song part of the point is that every listener gets to have their own experience of the song, and every listener gets to sort of insert themselves into the story of the song a little bit, and overlay their own experience with it. So the lyric becomes personal for every listener.
Right.
So when you take those lyrics that maybe didn't start as anything other than a spreadsheet math moment, they can create a really specific story that has a ton of meaning for a listener.
And you still did curate the lyrics in the first place. So they still did come from you. But I like surprising myself with like a interesting, these words next to these words. That's like fun to me. Like I'll tell you one thing I've discovered on my own that I think is like maybe some cool advice is, so a lot of times I'll write a song and I'll get to verse 2 and I'll write verse 2 and then I'll mute verse 1 and take verse 2 and put it as the first verse. And it's usually how it ends up. So,
really?
Yeah. So like, because by then I've already gotten into the sort of nuts and bolts of what the song might be about.
Yeah.
And verse 2 is often a more interesting version of where I started when I started writing the song. So I'll just take verse 2's lyrics and plunk it in verse 1 and then I'll go to verse 2 and trying to sort of extrapolate on that. And it usually stays that way.
Yeah.
And then maybe what I was saying in verse 1 that's now muted may end up being like an idea for a bridge.
Yeah.
It's cool. I watched this masterclass with St. Vincent, and she was saying what she likes to use bridges for is to sort of state the lesson you've learned that the rest of the lyrics have been leading up to. So she's like, every song should be a resolution, which I don't know if I agree with totally, but that's a cool goal for every song you write. And it's interesting because like since she said that, I'm a big fan of her music. I'll listen trying to figure out what that is, and I actually don't know what it is a lot of the time. But for her, that's how she wrote the song. So it's almost like you just have to like get yourself to finish it. However.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that concept too of like moving things around, that's something when students, I have lots of students who are singer-songwriters. Cool. And so they will bring in original stuff to work on in their lessons. And that's one of the things that I will talk about is, well, first off, what serves the song, which isn't always the same as what's the emotional story that you're telling doesn't always make the best song, but what part of your story serves the song best.
Right.
Sometimes that's a different equation, but also that conversation around, okay, you've got a full song written here, but you don't have a strong enough chorus yet. And that chorus is a great section, but it isn't a chorus. It's a great bridge though.
Yeah.
Like moving things around like that to find what serves the song best.
Absolutely.
Super useful in the process.
Yeah. And then another weird thing that I've taken from comedy is that like oftentimes your first idea for a punchline is the best one. And sometimes it's like that in songwriting too. And it's like, no, I'll come up with a better one. It's like, but that was the most natural, best thing. It's funny, when we were working on our last album, the drummer in Fake Shark, Alex, great guy, I was struggling to come up with a pre-chorus, and I was humming something and he was like, that kind of sounds like Grandson. And I was like, no, Grandson would do this, blah, blah, blah. And then it ended up being the pre-chorus. I was like doing an impression of Grandson, and then everyone would turn around and was like, that's the pre-chorus. It's like, oh yeah, cool.
That's actually an exercise that I give to students often when they get sort of stuck with writing or whatever, is I will say, pick an artist whose catalog you know well, so you know their music, and go away and write a song as though you are writing to submit to that artist.
Interesting. That's
because it
cool.
just takes you out of your own things that you normally do in writing for yourself.
Yeah.
And even though it's not that you're necessarily going to go submit to that artist, but you use different devices, things that you're used to hearing in somebody else's music.
It's also actually, I think, kind of easier to write for other people than yourself. Like for me, at least, like I will be sort of less precious because there's going to be someone else weighing in on the decisions. So in Fake Shark, it's like me weighing in on the decisions most of the time. So I'll try and edit myself a lot more than I would with, like Fion. It's like, there's an idea I came up with, like, and then assuming that they will be like, let's cut this part, let's do this differently. You know what I mean? So that is a great exercise. That's a really cool one.
Yeah. It can be really useful.
Yeah.
And now you've done some scoring and producing for film and TV as well.
Yeah.
How did you get into that?
I was friends with some directors, some filmmakers, and it's like, that's always like the last thing film people think of is audio. I've found out, like, kind of a hard way sometimes. And so I think I just kind of have a knack for, because I love soundtracks. Like those were kind of my first favorite albums growing up, were like, it's like, I grew up in a time where it'd be like, what if this electronic artist and this rapper did a song? And that's the soundtrack, is like a bunch of those kind of things. So I just grew up like loving soundtracks. And like, it's kind of a shame now. Like, it happens here or there with like really big budget movies. Like Black Panther had a cool soundtrack where all the songs were made for the movie. And same with, what was that movie with Harley Quinn and the Joker? I'm forgetting the, this is so dumb, I can't remember it. You know what I'm talking about? Jared Leto movie. Like, the soundtrack's so good for that movie.
Suicide Squad?
There it is. Got
there in the end.
Sarah knows her movies.
Sarah knows.
But I always like loved, and you can play by different rules if you're making songs for a movie. Than you can like just a radio song or something. So you can be more moody. It usually, I like, still to this day, like one of my favorite albums is Romeo and Juliet soundtrack. It's the great, and it's all produced.
Which one?
The one with like cardigans and stuff on it. Like, and it was all these cool alternative artists produced by Nelly Hooper, who is Massive Attack's producer. So it's so cool. Like, how could that go wrong? And like, I love all the music on that. Like, a lot of the bands on there, my favorite song they've ever done is on that soundtrack. Like, that's to me the best Everclear song, the best Garbage song. Love the Radiohead song on there. So that's something that I just felt like natural to. Like, I would say like writing radio songs and stuff was like unnatural for me. And I think writing music for movies was very natural for me. So I've, I started sort of offering to do scoring and things for different friends, filmmakers and stuff. And then, Fake Shark, when that band formed, the band I'm in currently, our first single got an Apple commercial like right away. So that kind of informed us as to a path we could take to, for exposure and making a living at it, is like focusing on trying to get sync licenses. And it's similar to movies. So now you're writing your band's songs in a way that maybe they'd be good for commercials and stuff like that. And that sounds really shallow, but to me, that's a really cool challenge. And Apple always uses cool bands. So I have a playlist of just every song that's ever been in an Apple commercial, and I listen to it a lot, and it's like gives me ideas and like, oh, it's pretty cool that his voice is so distorted you almost can't understand the lyrics, but it's still gotten a massive commercial. So I like sort of learning about the rules of what you can do and like playing within them. And that's inspiring to me. I find that I get uninspired if there seems like there's just anything goes. I don't really like that. It's like why it's fun to make a remix, because there's all these things already here that you can work with. So,
Well, and I mean, you're talking to someone who, my dad, that was his whole business, was advertising.
The legend.
So I don't think it's...
I think it's cool.
Well, and I think that it actually really speaks to the fact that you can draw inspiration and learning from anywhere.
Totally.
And especially when you're intentional about it like that. Like, I'm going to make a playlist that highlights this thing that I want to learn about.
Totally.
Great.
I like the sort of like research aspects of it. there's this comedian that I really love named Neil Brennan, and he was going to direct a movie, his first movie, and so he watched the Oscar-winning Best Picture of every year to prepare for it. And I like that kind of thing. That's like exciting to me to like sort of see what like my take would be on it, or just learning from the greats. Like it's interesting. Like I'm a big movie watcher and fan.
Yeah.
I don't really care about actors. I care about directors and screenplay writers.
Yeah.
Like I love Aaron Sorkin, who wrote a show called West Wing, and then his directorial debut, which he wrote, is a movie called Molly's Game. It's like one of my favorite movies. It's like it's like a perfectly written pop song. There's like no fat to trim off it, you know?
Okay, well, I'm going to have to go watch that movie because I've never watched the movie. I've watched West Wing, but I've never watched Molly's Game.
Is so good.
Okay.
And the performances in it are amazing. He also wrote Social Network.
Okay, I've seen that.
Yeah, and that's David Fincher directing it, who's like one of my favorite directors. Like, if David Fincher puts out a new movie, I'm watching it. Aaron Sorkin, like, I love writers and directors way more than like stars.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today. So that was actually just part one of our interview. And I would love it if you come back on Thursday to check out the second part of our interview. There's so much more juicy goodness. I can't wait for you to check it out.